Hey, it's the last Wednesday of the month, and yes, this is a rerun of an old episode. But hey, we think it's a really good one, and well, we got hit with some COVID over here. Yup, after 2.5 years, the Rona has reached the Kelly household. So we're not quite ready with the poop episode, but we are making it, and if you're dying to hear it, subscribe. And if you want to be in it, record a poop joke. Pretty please. Now before we get any further, I gotta give a shout out to two of you awesome kids listeners who made the move from loyal listeners to saying hello. So hi Reese, it's so great to finally meet you. And Zoe, hello. We love the idea of making a movie episode. We'll have to talk more about it, and thanks for those poop jokes. You're officially in the next episode. Okay. So this is the kids podcast about kids who podcast episode. We created it because, hey, kids can make podcasts too, and we can help with that. In fact, while making this podcast, we've met new friends who are kids who podcast. We hope you enjoy it. We hope if you're thinking about creating a podcast, you'll learn something. Either way, we wish to entertain and also to collaborate. Because I don't know if you noticed, but we keep on inviting you. Yes, you. I keep inviting you to join this podcast. You get it. Moving on. Oh, also, side note, I'm quarantining, so I haven't gotten it yet. But by the time this is out, I might have gotten it. Hopefully not, though. Okay, goodbye. Enjoy the episode. Welcome. This episode of This Kid's Podcast is about kids who podcast. Try and say that 5 times fast. I've noticed a lot of you are getting interested in this awesome medium, so I want to help. We have so many exciting guests for you to meet.
Hi, Ari.
Hello, Olivia.
Mia, would you like to go first?
Sure.
Hi. Is that good?
If there's an echo, we'll go to the closet.
It might be a bit dark there. Thanks for inviting me.
How are you doing today?
I am doing fine. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you.
I'm so excited for you to hear their unique perspectives. I've learned a lot from my guests, and I think you can too. So for this episode, I put together a segment that has all of their tips. You'll also get to, for fun of course, guess the podcasting-related bizarre ASMR. We'll nerd out about the word podcasting and put Ben's sad trombone sound to good use. The Bad Dad segment is bursting with podcasting-flavored bad dad jokes. So let's get to it. This is At Your Level, and I'm your host, Ari Kelly. Our very first guest is Olivia from the Curious Kid podcast.
Okay, Olivia's going to take the captain seat.
All right. Well, let's get sailing. She is the youngest podcaster I have ever met.
My name's Olivia, and my podcast is the Curious Kid Podcast.
Great podcast. I am a fan. So, can you please describe Curious Kids podcast?
Okay, the Curious Kid Podcast is an educational kids podcast. It's a weekly podcast, and you can learn about really anything you want, and we do listener suggestions. So if you want to send us an email, we can do whatever you want us to get curious about.
Are you wowed by Olivia yet? So, get this. This 7-year-old actually got Dr. Fauci to answer one of her questions. So, of course, I had to ask. How did you get Dr. Fauci to answer your question?
So we're a part of the crew of a podcast called The 10 News, and they did an episode where we could send in a question for Dr. Fauci, and they would email it to Dr. Fauci.
I asked Olivia to give me an example of something she finds challenging about podcasting.
Probably that when I make mistakes by saying words, it gets frustrating. Like, for example, when I was trying to say Southern Hemisphere, I said Southern Hamster by accident.
Finally, I asked Olivia, now that you've learned so much about podcasting, if you could make a completely new podcast without your dad, what would it be about?
I think it would be about books, so I could talk about books that I like, and other people could read the books, and then we could talk about it together.
I'm not sure if you were wondering, but if you were, then I'll tell you about my creative process. What I mean by that is, how does an episode come about? So, it always starts with the topic. Me and my mom think to ourselves, what should the next episode be about? The first episode was going to be about pets, but then COVID happened. So, we got to pets later. Most of the episodes started from the guests and their interests. But most importantly, we look at all the votes and all of the comments from the website so we can learn what you, listeners, want to hear. Once we have a topic, it all just clicks, I guess you could say. This episode started off with Seth and Mia from Whenever Wherever Kids podcast. We hopped into a Zoom for me to be interviewed in. By the way, it's on their podcast if you want to listen. But back to what I was talking about. There I came up with the idea to make an episode about kids podcast because I wanted Seth and Mia to be on this episode. I think you'll really like them. I immediately thought that, and here they are. So without further ado, Whenever Wherever Kids podcast is here with Seth and Mia.
I'm Mia Diario. I'm 13 years old, and I'm from the podcast Whenever Wherever Kids podcast.
I'm Seth Poehler. I am 14 years old, and I am also from the Whenever Wherever Kids podcast.
Here's Seth.
Whenever Wherever Kids podcast is a kids podcast that tells really fun kid stories with awesome voices and fun storylines. But the core of it is we merge in morals that we think are important for every kid to learn at a young age. And they're not morals that are like outside of the situation that we just kind of like squeeze in there real fast at the end. We like intertwine them into the characters.
So I asked Mia, what makes their story podcast unique?
There's a lot of components that I feel like make our podcast unique. I feel like there are a lot of podcasts that like do kid stories with morals and stuff. I feel like not all of them morals are like one of the primary focus. Like Seth even has a thing called What's the Moral, where he goes in depth about the moral, usually on like a part 2 or something. So I feel like our morals are really intertwined in it. I also think one of the components that makes ours kind of unique is that it's all set in this like universe that they all fit together. All our stories all like come together. And for the first season and the second season, though we're probably going to change that for the third season, all the characters have had to come together to like save the storyverse or something like that.
Yeah.
So, which I think is a really cool and unique component.
These guys have an entire team. Seth is really knowledgeable about sound and recording equipment, and they are a bit older than me. So I was curious, is this what they want to do when they grow up? I mean, I love podcasting, but when I grow up, I want to be a vet. I was curious if Mia and Seth want to be podcasters or if they have something else in mind too. So I asked them, what do you want to be when you grow up?
When I grow up, I'm not like 100% sure what I'm going to do, but I'm hoping maybe I could be either a writer or a Bible teacher. Maybe I'm thinking like writer and then part-time Bible teacher.
Well, Broadway, that'd be cool. I'd love to do Broadway, but I know that's not a super stable and realistic dream job. So doing podcasting full time would be cool, but I would also love being a corporate lawyer because I have a weird obsession with paperwork and contracts. It's like kind of
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he wrote like a bajillion contracts when we were like, he was like drafting up all our contracts for the for the podcast. It was just like every day I'd talk to him, he'd be like, contract.
Yeah. Somebody gives me a contract, I'm like, thank you. And they're like, just sign it. I'm like, I want to read it.
Finally, there are so many mediums for Mia and Mr. Broadway to explore. I was curious why they chose podcasting.
I started a podcast because YouTube channels, there's all ways, the stuff going wrong where like they can steal your identity from your face and they can this and that. Also, if you're doing storytelling, you got to put some like animation behind it. And I did
Yeah.
not want to get into that. So I was like, audio is just like, I like audio. Audio is fun.
Audio
way-
is fun.
The way sound is and the way God created sound is just so fascinating to me. It's like how some words, they're like actually two separate sounds. It's
We've had a Curious Kid Asking Questions podcast, a story podcast, this, At Your Level, which is an interview and kid participation podcast. Now, how about a newsy jacuzzi?
I'm 8, and my podcast name is Newsy Jacuzzi, and my name is Leela Shushankar Praka.
This fun mother-daughter duo recently traveled from semi-lockdown Delhi, India, to fully lockdown London, England. I cannot tell you how much we like this worldly team and their podcast. I mean, just their name is awesome, right? I also think it's the most similar to this podcast in how other kids can join in and participate, except, of course, they report on news and current events. But enough from me. Let's meet Leela. I asked Leela to describe Newsy Jacuzzi and share what she thinks is unique about it.
So Newsy Jacuzzi is a world news podcast, and we have lots of different segments like art, culture, and entertainment, big news story of the week, science, tech, and oddball. And we also have a few like little side things that we sometimes do. One is the kindness corner, and that's where we're really like kind stories. And then we also have a little segment called Top 5 Bad Facts Heard on the Show. It's a bit of a tongue twister, and basically all the little facts we heard on the show, which we turn into like a kind of quiz. So we have a little ticking clock where you can answer it and then you can see if it's right. And then we also tell you a little bit of a fact. And so that's kind of Newsy Jacuzzi. The most unique thing is that it's by kids and for kids, because not like the other kids news podcasts out, like kids don't host it. And we're a kid news podcast that do.
Finally, other than obviously learning lots from interesting things that she reports on, I was curious what Leela learned about herself since she started podcasting.
Well, the most interesting thing I've learned while making the show, I love searching news stories, and I never thought that I'd actually become a news reporter and reporting news for other people. And when we thought of the idea, I was like, yeah, actually that's pretty cool.
It's time for Bizarre ASMR, the segment where I play you a mystery sound and you guess what you think it is. Remember, all the Bizarre ASMRs are on my website, atyourlevelpod.com, so that you can play along. Also, every episode's title is the hint for each sound. As always, we start off with the sound I played you on the last episode. Here is the winter holiday episode's Bizarre ASMR. What do you think that was? Here's what Zayden and Dylan guessed.
I felt like it was a marble at first.
That's the same thing as Zayden.
It sounds like a marble run, right? Yes. A marble going through.
All right, so you guys think it's marbles?
Yeah.
Now let's hear what Leela thought it was.
Okay, so that sound, it may have been a dice on a board game. So I'm not that sure, but I think it's it sounds like maybe like a marble or a ball or like a marble.
And here's Olivia.
I have a guess, but I don't think it's correct. You putting a marble down the marble run.
Why does everybody think that? Do you guys at home think it's a marble too? Okay, here are Mia and Seth.
Ooh, this is hard. Okay, was it like a marble dropping?
Everybody thinks it's a marble dropping. It has some. It
sounds like a marble dropping, though.
Yes. The ASMR always has to do with the episode's title.
Okay.
Ooh, okay.
Winter
So-
holidays.
Think of all of the winter holidays: winter solstice, Hanukkah, Christmas, New Year's.
Oh, I think I might know what it is.
What is?
Is it Santa going into the chimney?
Who knows? I mean, I'm just gonna flat out say it. It was actually it had something to do with Hanukkah, and it was me recording myself spinning a dreidel. Do you know what a dreidel is?
Yes, because I do celebrate Hanukkah.
Okay.
Ooh, okay.
Winter
So-
holidays. Let me listen to it again.
It was like, dur, 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 dur.
Yeah. Okay, I will remind you all of some winter holidays. So
Okay.
there's Hanukkah.
Oh, it's a dreidel.
Oh, dreidel.
Oh,
Like this little thing.
I once celebrated Hanukkah with my friend, but I totally forgot. Yeah.
These little,
Yeah,
like the
little,
little dreidels.
Tops.
Yeah, I knew you didn't ever told me
I
the answer.
barely learned. I learned how to play that dreidel game. Last year there was this big winter holiday celebration where the whole day we could take off our shoes literally, and we could just walk around do it to different stations playing different games.
Now, are you ready for this episode's sound? Did you guess the last ASMR right? I think this one's a bit easier. Remember, if you want to send me your guesses, I'll play them on the show. I learned so much from podcasting. It's helped me improve old skills and learn new ones too. Like writing. I'm reading from my own script right now. At first, I didn't know what I was doing. My mom helped me tons. Then, she let me write more and more over the course of these 11 awesome episodes. I think I'm doing a pretty good job. Now, sound editing was a different case. It actually took me up until this episode to even kind of know what I'm doing. It's a new skill for sure. Like with everything else, there's stuff I'm good at and enjoy. But then there's editing. For me, it's a drag. Now, interviewing skills was a different case. It was not hard at all. I like interviewing people and being with people on Zoom. So we're doing it more and more, and I think I'm getting better at it. Better questions, better answers by the guests. Not really my doing, but stay with me here. All in all, podcasting helps you build skills. Here's what Mia had to say.
The hardest part of podcasting, besides, sure, there's a lot of components that are hard, like writing out things or editing and all that stuff. Editing's really hard. But one of the most important parts is getting your motivation to do it. It's not just because if you're lacking your motivation to do something, it's going to really hold you back when you're trying to get something done. Because I know there's been many times where I'm like, I really got to do something, but I haven't really had the motivation to get it done. Another thing is trying to push yourself to be better. I mean, if it's something you really want to do, then you should be constantly trying to push yourself to get better at doing it.
Yes, I completely agree with that. And here's Leela.
Editing a bit of the pieces may be a bit hard, but it's actually sometimes I'm learning how to edit a few of the pieces. So before we take them out, so I edit them, and you think that may be a bit hard, but actually it's quite fun. You feel more connected to the podcast.
And don't forget, Leela also learns a lot about the news. Here's what Olivia shared.
I learned a lot about other stuff, but my favorite episode would be batteries. So I learned a lot about batteries in that episode.
You can start if you want, Seth, and then.
Okay. Something I've learned besides like sound and editing and all that side of it is do it. Like, stop sitting on the couch watching YouTube and get up and just go do it. Like, you can't do it unless you do it.
And last but so not least, my very favorite answer.
I also learned to kind of find confidence in myself because confidence is something I'm not very good at. But I kind of learned confidence in myself.
It's been really cool to see her like just kind of come out of her shell and like force her opinions. Like that sounds kind of bad, but it's like a good thing. I promise. Just don't have better words.
Podcasting is is a very good thing. Like you learn a lot from it.
You really do.
Since this episode is about kids who podcast, wouldn't it make sense for us to find out the when, who, and why of podcasting? I mean, when was the first podcast created? Who invented it? And why? Oh, why is a podcast called a podcast anyways? I hope you all know that it's nerd out time. So let's just hop straight into it. My first question was, who came up with the word podcast? Ben Hammersley was writing an article for The Guardian, and it was coming out a little bit too short. Well, you know how when you're writing and you kind of need to pad things up a bit? Irony, am I right? So I looked into this Hammersley dude, and aside from sporting a fabulous mustache, and I mean it when I say fabulous mustache, the word podcast he invented was declared the word of the year by New Oxford American Dictionary. Which brings us to our next question. When were podcasts first invented? Well, Ben Hammersley wrote that article in early February 2004. Crazy, right? You might have thought a little earlier, but nope. I say it again. Crazy, right? There was a radio and all sorts of other types of broadcast systems, but if we're going strictly by that name, it was 17 years ago. Alright, I was also curious why podcasts are called podcasts to begin with. And it turns out that he mashed together two words, iPod and broadcast. Take away the I from iPod and get rid of the broad from broadcast, and kabam, you've got yourself a podcast. Well, that's all for this Nerd Out. Bye now. I have one more guest for you to meet.
My name is Rob Walsh, and I am the VP, that's Vice President of Podcaster Relations at Libsyn, which stands for Liberated Syndication.
Libsyn is our podcasting host. My parents did a lot of homework on this before they chose Libsyn. I guess not all hosts are the same. And since I got Rob on the line, I asked him, how is Libsyn different?
First, we were the first podcast host. We started in 2004.
2004. Remember the Nerd Out? That's when it all started.
So we were the very first podcast host. Before Apple even supported podcasting, there was Libsyn. And then how we're also different is our goal is just to help people get their podcast out to more places. It's about distribution. It's about setting up those destinations for Spotify and Ghana and iHeartRadio.
So, like me, you might be wondering, what does the VP of Podcaster Relations do exactly?
My job, in part, is what I'm doing right now. I get to talk to podcasters. So part of my job is I get paid to talk to other podcasters, which is kind of a really cool job to have. And part of it is helping podcasters get their podcast out to more places. So, for example, I get to help when Spotify, I was the one that brought Spotify in to be a destination, and Ghana and some of the other things. So if you have your podcast out on some places, part of that is part of my job is helping set up those partnerships.
Finally, since Rob sees a lot of podcasts come and go, I asked him, what makes for a good podcast?
It's really hard. What's a good podcast? Some people say, well, you look at the numbers, one of the ones that have the most downloads. Well, that doesn't really make it a good podcast, because you can have a really good podcast about chameleon breeding, and it's only for people that breed chameleons. Now, that podcast is never going to have numbers like a big comedy podcast, but when you get 800 people listening to a podcast about chameleon breeding, he's probably doing a pretty good job. Mm-hmm. And what it is what I find the two things that differentiate a good podcast from a bad podcast are one, they are respectful of their listeners' time. And in other words, you're giving them information, you're doing something to help them save time. Or two, and it's not exclusive. It can be and or too. You're entertaining them. You're making them smile, making them laugh, making them cry, whatever. But you're connecting with them in some way, and your show is entertaining. If you can make it entertaining and informative, where you're saving them time, then you have a really successful podcast.
Hey, Ari.
Oh, it's bad. I mean, Dad, do you have a podcasting joke for us?
Oh, you want a joke about podcasting? Let me get back to you on that.
Sure, take your time. Bad Dad's got to nerd out too. Here's a good one we got from Scott.
Did you hear about the little person psychic who escaped from the police? He was a small medium at large.
I know this one is technically not a podcasting Bad Dad joke, but podcasting is a medium, Scott is a dad, and well, I actually don't think it's that bad. But it is a joke.
I still don't have one.
Okay, keep working at wonky magic, Pops. In the meantime, this is not a dad, not about podcasting, but it is so bad. But at the same time, it's kind of hilarious.
Can I tell a bad dad joke?
No.
Sure.
No.
Yay!
Oh.
Why can't you hear a pteranodon go to the bathroom?
Oh no, Thomas, please not this one, please.
I want to hear it.
'Cause the P is silent.
If you're in the kitchen, then you're American. If you're going in the bathroom, then European. And if you're waiting to go to the bathroom, then you're Russian.
Oh, this is so bad.
Hey, Ari.
Yes. You know it has to be extra bad now, right?
What did the Spanish podcast host say after her broadcast?
Hit me with it.
Adios.
That's actually funny, Dad.
Can podcasting be an addiction?
I guess?
Depends on the frequency.
That's pretty awful.
Okay, last one. A podcast host went to the doctor. The doctor said, "What seems to be the problem today?" The podcast host said, "It's my headphone amp. It mega hurts."
Up. We are not done here. There's one more grand finale Bad Dad joke. It's really bad. It's from a dad. He has a podcast. His kid has a podcast. So he's a podcasting dad and a dad podcaster. He's a freaking VP of podcasting. Give it up for Rob.
Okay, I got a bad dad joke for you. So the scenario is if you are in an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie and you were a podcaster and he was going to kill you in the movie, what would his pun be? So Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, whenever he killed the bad guys or the guys, he would make a pun.
Yeah, hasta la vista, baby.
So
I believe that was one of them.
So for podcasters, it would be, "I'm going to drop you like a mic."
Oh, that was bad. Oh my God. This is the material we are looking for. I promised we were going to have a tip segment, and here we are. Let's get to it. Drum roll, please. Rob's going to start us off with advice coming directly from his experience with his son, Porter, who started Porter's podcast at the age of 5.
He came to me with what he wanted to do and what he wanted to call it. And those were the two things that I say are important if you want to start a podcast. You have to know what you want to do, what you want to call it. After that, it's just a matter of doing it.
Next, there's that ho-hum human Nike, just do it meme-worthy advice.
Since you're a kid, there's going to be a lot of people telling you you're not smart enough, you're not good enough, you're not talented enough to do this. And if that's your parents saying you're not allowed to do that, that's a different thing. Listen to your parents, please.
True.
But if it's outside people, like, I don't know, mean kids or just like
Yeah, like
skeptical adults.
Like that one bully at school that is always a jerk to everybody.
Yeah, like I've had quite a few people like that saying, oh, it's just a side thing, gonna drop it in a month. Because like there are kids who will do that. And that's totally fine. Like if you don't want to do it, don't do it. But like if it's something you want to do and people are telling you you can't do it, you can do it. I believe in you.
Prove them wrong.
Yes. Prove them wrong is what I'm trying to say. Like don't let them define you.
Here's Rob talking about the Joe Rogan Experience.
He stayed true to who he was. He didn't listen to what everybody, all these consultants told him to do. He just did a show that he wanted to listen to himself. And he talked to the people that interested him. And it wound up that his audience was also interested by those people. He didn't try to figure out what his audience wanted. He just figured out what he wanted.
And here, wise beyond her years, say it, Olivia.
Do what you think and what you think is interesting, because there's a very good chance thousands of other people are going to like what you like.
Okay, then we have some technical and practical advice.
There's a great program called Levelator. So what you can do is at the end, you can run everything through Levelator, and Levelator will make everything about the same volume level. So if I happen to be really high and you happen to be very low, you can run it through Levelator and it'll get us closer on levels. And then if you record a pre-roll and a post-roll segment, you want to get everything together, you can use Levelator. That's a program you might want to look at. And there's another program called Auphonic Leveler as well. It does similar thing.
Just side tip I found is if you have a lot of static that you can't get rid of, any device in the room, put it on airplane mode. All that like huzz and buzz, it cuts out a lot of it. It's really weird.
My advice for the technical stuff is don't be afraid to try stuff out. For software, we played around with GarageBand, Audacity, and Adobe Audition. What's right for me is not necessarily right for you. Same goes for the hardware. That's the microphone, headset, and amp. And even host. Speaking of host, here's Rob from Libsyn again.
So I don't know if you've submitted your show yet to Ghana, but Ghana is a really big app in India. And a lot of people don't know about Ghana, but it's one of the top 3 streaming sites in the world. You should submit your podcast to it because I've seen kids' podcasts doing well on Ghana. My son's podcast does very well on it.
Leela had some great advice for all of you too.
Yeah, so you should always think, like, it can be something simple, but it has to at least have a bit of like fun and like a kick, like your podcast. And it needs to be fun, and it needs to, and you don't really need like a big like you don't need to go somewhere to have a studio, and you don't need to have like a like so many people, like a whole team. Like you can, if you want to start simple, you can just have your microphone, your little recording studio and stuff inside your house, or even if you have a recording studio outside, that's fine. If you're a kid, do try to explain more things, and always explain things and make them more fun and easy to understand.
I saved the best for last.
All of the kid podcasters I know, we're all really nice. Like, reach out to us.
That is my tip for you too. I like every podcaster I've met so far. So try to collaborate. It's not only nice to make new friends, but it also helps a lot. I would love to collaborate if you wanted to. A good way to start is to send me an email.
Interact with your audience. Have your audience be part of the show. Call in, have them record a comment on their smartphone and email it to you.
Thanks, Rob. Hey, you. Yeah, you. So send me clips and stuff, and we'll play it on the show. You know that's how it works, right? Okay, folks. The next episode is going to be about time. If you want to tell me what you think about the concept of time, or answer some of the questions I'll be asking in the next episode, you can email me at atyourlevelpod@gmail.com. And if you want a list of the questions, ask your parents to sign up for the monthly newsletter. It's on atyourlevelpod.com. One question that you can record and send me is your answer to, what is your earliest memory that you can remember? How old were you? And what was the memory? We're looking for good material. If you have some thoughts on the topic of time, you can hear yourself on the next episode of At Your Level. And with that, I'd like to thank you for listening. Without you, I wouldn't have a show. Before I thank all of the amazing guests that gave me their time, advice, and general awesomeness, I want to thank Kids Listen. If you like listening to At Your Level and want more really good kids podcasts to listen to, you should really check them out. I learned about them from my favorite podcaster, Eric O'Keefe from What If World. All the kid podcasters on this episode are members too. Kids Listen also has an activity podcast. It's called, get this, the Kids Listen Activity Podcast. And guess what? I just hosted the last episode. There's even a PDF we made to go along with the episode so that you can play along and make your own bizarre ASMRs and invent your own sandwich and stuff. I am so grateful to all my guests, all of you listeners and my mom, and also my brother for all of that brass. Olivia, you are so impressive and inspiring. It's great how you can release an episode every week at the age of 7. Heck, I'm 11 and I only release an episode every month. Mia and Seth, I really think you set an example for us kids with the morals in your stories. But I think you also set an even bigger example with your teamwork. Thanks for being on my show and sharing your podcasting experience with me and my guests. Leela, I love your podcast and I actually prefer your version of the news. I love how you get so many kids involved. And last but not least, Rob, I'll be back. As always, I'm Ari, and At Your Level is a production of Art and Light Society.